How's it going, guys? It's your boy Mike here with a very special guest, the Lumberjack Landlord. And with you coming on the channel, Matt, I've now completed the trifecta of the three amigos. So tell the people hi.
I'm super pumped to be here, Mike. Super pumped.
So what we're going to talk about today on the 4th of July, on the Independence Day of America, on American Exceptionalism Day, we're going to talk about how this country is so exceptional, how it can help somebody like Matt, who was a ninth grade dropout, left high school, but somehow got himself to a point where he has 117 rental units. And he and I were just casually joking about buying orange Lamborghinis together. And then also how it could help somebody like me, someone who was born the son of an illegal immigrant and a mom who had a job that I can't say, lest I get demonetized on YouTube, how it can help somebody like Matt and somebody like me do everything we've been able to do. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, Matt, is what caused you to drop out of high school in the ninth grade? Like, what led up to that?
Yeah, so it was, I was bored to tears. I was just absolutely bored to tears. I saw no practical applicability of what I was being taught. As humbly and arrogantly as I can say it, I was smarter than most of the teachers. They're just like, well, no, you need to learn this. I was like, no, I don't. I'm not ever going to use this ever. I need to better understand how businesses work. I need to understand, because I'd been working since, so ninth grade. So I was about 13, 14 years old. And I'd worked since I was about 11, paper routes and everything else, and always chasing after the next thing. And figuring out, very entrepreneurial, figuring out how I could, buy something at a yard sale and sell it somewhere else. And this is before the internet was really a thing, I mean, it was that long ago. Because, we're talking about, I was like a 90s kid. And then for me, I suffered from, get this, social anxiety. I had the worst social anxiety in the world.
Like introverted? You're an introvert?
I was, so that was the weird thing, is that, I liked learning. I liked sharing what I learned, but it was just, I was just extremely, I was afraid of everything. There was nothing that I wasn't afraid of. Except for business. My brain worked that way. And I could sell ice to Eskimos, but outside of that process, I didn't like spending time with people. I really couldn't stand people, generally speaking, because so often logically for me, people didn't work, right? They do this, but they say this. And I was like, those are completely opposing ideas and ideologies.
Right.
And so for me, it was, just like constant grind, constant learning. And I was bored out of my mind at school. The social anxiety had really kind of crescendoed. And I just told my mom, and I was like, I can't go to school anymore. I just can't. Like, I can't put myself through the stress every day of trying to go to school when I'm not getting anything out of it. I don't find any value in this. And I'm working, and I love working. And as you know, it's tough. You can't get a full-time job as a 14-year-old. Difficult.
There are some laws against that.
There are some laws against that. And so it was picking up a bunch of different jobs. I started buying and selling sports memorabilia. I started buying it when I was a kid, 9, 10, 11. And then I started selling it when I was 14 and 15. And so that was actually how I started. That was the first entrepreneurial piece, along with flyers in the neighborhood to mow your lawn, delivering newspapers, and then sports memorabilia. That's how I made my kid nut on a monthly basis.
I mean, that's all you got to do sometimes. I cut grass myself, pushed lawnmowers so I could buy Pokemon cards. I'm also a child of the 90s. I'm a little bit younger than you, but I was born in 1990. Okay. And so I understand the hustle and your paper routes. This was back when you actually still could do that. Nowadays, if you were like a 10-year-old and you try to get a paper route, it's not happening. Just not happening. You're not legally going to be allowed to. So you can mow the lawn. But that's about it.
But only with a flyer. And that was the other thing too, is I gotten so used, my mom was a real estate. And so I gotten so used to answering the phone professionally. When we put the phone number out there, it was her second line. And so when we saw it ring in on the second line, I could answer the phone and I would say, hi, this is Matt. How can I help you? Did you get my flyer? And then it was like, yes, I did. I would like you to come over and mow my lawn. Fantastic. Here I come. And that was when mowing a lawn got you $10.
Yeah.
And I was just
Yeah.
like, it was a lot of work. And it was a walker, you know, I was smaller and thinner
Mhm.
then. But yeah, that's how I stayed in summer shape, was walking behind a lawnmower.
I like it. So, okay, so you have an entrepreneurial spirit at a young
Yeah,
age, and
sure.
because of it, you're frustrated by school. You're annoyed
Oh,
because nothing you're learning is applicable. The people are being taught to be employees, and you are
yes.
more interested in learning how to run
Yeah.
a business. Do
Yeah.
you think that people are born with an entrepreneurial spirit, or is this an environmental factor? Where did it come from in you that made you different than the other people you went to school with?
Nature versus nurture. Nature
Right.
always wins. It's hard saying. I mean, think, you know, my dad was a clock puncher. My dad was a clock puncher. My parents got divorced. My mom was not a clock puncher. My grandpa, he was a clock puncher. He was a
Mm,
dentist.
mm,
And so, you know, that was his thing. And so, yeah, it's hard saying. I think a lot of it, believe it or not, a lot of what kind of shaped my view of the world a lot was probably television. Television
okay.
shaped my view of the world a lot. Like, you know, my favorite movies, you know, kind of growing up, Wall Street and, you know, Secret of My Success with, you know,
Okay.
Michael J. Fox, and, you know, those types of movies where it's the nobody, the nothing that is
Right.
able to make something of themselves. And so that was what was like, you know, I can do this too. And just understanding kind of how that worked. Um, because I wasn't as handsome as Michael J. Fox and or as Charlie Sheen.
You're right,
So
right,
it
right,
was
right.
like, I'm gonna have to figure something else out. And so yeah, just and so it was, I think part of it was failure sort of not being an option, but also it being okay to fail.
Mm,
Like if I failed and no one called me on my flyer, whatever. Like, okay, on to the next thing. I'll figure out the next thing. But the other thing that really I enjoyed was the sports card stuff, because, and
mm,
that's why honestly, why I had so much trouble with the comic stuff. It's like, how do you really gauge someone's popularity and how they're going to gain that popularity in baseball or football or hockey or basketball? It's their performance on the court directly
mm.
impacts and correlates to the value of their cards.
Right,
And so
right.
that's where for me, it was just like, okay, yep, absolutely. I watch sports and now I'm doing homework. This is good. And then that's when fantasy football and fantasy baseball came along.
That's yeah, yeah. You had a childhood where you were extremely entrepreneurial. You're saying nature versus nurture. And for me, I know that you mentioned earlier, I want you to talk about this briefly. I want to know how the single mother, being raised by a single mother where money was tight, I assume that played into the nature part of it right there, and affected you and from an environmental standpoint of, if you wanted money or if you wanted something for yourself, you probably had to go get it yourself. So why don't you elaborate?
Yeah, I mean that was it. You know, you were, if a bicycle, like I bought my own,
Mhm.
my first car, bought my own, car insurance, paid for my own. And it was, if you wanted something, you had to go out and earn it to get it. It's a little bit different than society today.
Mhm.
But those are the things that we're trying to instill our kids in our kids, our three kids. And so for us, it was very much grind. I was a great employee because I grew businesses.
Right.
Every company I ever worked for, I helped grow it. And that's something that always kind of got me going, was I could see things differently. And so it's like, if you equate it to a sports person, they say, when I got really good, I could see the game slow down for me,
Mhm.
and it made them that much better. And it made them make others around them better. That's where I kind of got to, and from a business perspective, was I could see things slowing down around me, and the little nuances and little changes that could be made to drastically increase value in the company. And so for me, it was just one of those things where, thank God I found out what I was good at, because I found out what I was good at. And then it was a matter of sidling up to anybody that did anything that was like, okay, I could learn something at that age. You can learn something from anyone.
Mhm.
And you can still technically, when you're older, when you're my age, you can still learn something from anyone. It's just a lot more fewer and further in between.
Mhm.
So it was really, if I wanted something, I was going to have to go out and get it. And largely, we were young when my parents got divorced. I wasn't old enough to stay at home and watch myself or my sister. And so
Right.
for years, our Saturdays were going out in the car. My mom had a huge car, one of those big, huge, massive Buick Roadmasters that was like driving. I always used to call it the driving cloud. But we would
Yeah.
pack in those things, and we would go and we look at property. And I remember, I think it was probably 10 years old. We were in a car, and the guy nudges me and he goes, "What do you think about this house?" I was like, "It's a really nice house." And he goes, "What do you think about the other house?" And I go, "I think for the difference in price, I'd buy the other one and build the things that you like here."
Mm.
And then I didn't remember that until my mother reminded me probably 8 or 10 years later. She's like, I said, "All I remember is catching a sharp elbow from you." Because I was sitting next to her and she gave me one of these. And I was like, that's the way I saw it. So it was just one
Right.
of those things that, yeah, if I wanted something, I was going to have to go out and get it. And,
Mhm.
a treat for us was being able to go in the basement and pick pennies out of the penny jar
Nice.
to then, buy a pizza.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit, if you are our Domino's driver from when I
Mm.
was a kid, I apologize. We still tipped. We still tipped, but it was in pennies. So my apologies. I know it took you a while to get through those.
Well, that's awesome. I remember when I was a kid, our treat, it was like Christmas if we got to go to McDonald's. It was like,
Yeah,
oh, we get to eat out. We're going to McDonald's. Oh, shoot. Nice. Yeah, that was like the
exactly.
coolest thing for me. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right.
We didn't the McDonald's for us was far away. And so that's how I made up for it later on in life. But but yeah, that's how my wife and we would treat each other when we were really, really poor. And this was only about 10, 12, maybe 12 years, 12 to 14 years ago, right around the Great Recession. And that's how we would treat ourselves, as we would go and we'd shop off the dollar menu and we could get our dinners for about $7 combined.
Yeah. Yeah. This is also back when McDonald's was cheap. And unfortunately, it's extremely expensive now.
It's much more
So,
expensive now.
I,
Yeah.
it always makes me depressed because I'm like, I ain't going to McDonald's. It's too pricey. If I'm going to spend $15 for a meal, I may as well go to the Olive Garden. What the flip?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So you had a entrepreneurial upbringing by necessity to some
Yeah.
degree.
Sure.
And then from there, you get into school and you just don't have the patience for it. It's a giant waste of your time. You can do better, make more money on your own. You don't care about learning the Pythagorean theorem. It's not applicable to what you're going to do in life. So you quit. You're done. You're out. So you drop out in the ninth grade. From there until real estate investing, what happened? So you said you were still poor during the Great Recession, 07, 08. So what happened between when you dropped out of high school, which I imagine was late 90s probably?
Yeah. So high school dropout was, no, it was actually early 90s. It was like
I was trying
91
to
or
help you
90.
out, buddy. You could have lied.
Yeah.
It would have been all
It's all right.
right.
No, I'm
So
old.
I
It's
was doing the
okay.
math in my head and trying to be nice
I've,
for you.
I've embraced it. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm always about the math. So sadly, it was like early midnight or like 92 ish.
Right.
And so,
I
yeah, it
was
was like,
I was 1 year old.
yeah, I was 14 then, and a fresh high school dropout.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. And so, yeah, I mean, we between that, so it was like the next 6 years was, trying to get over my social anxiety, trying to, I was on every med you could imagine and a lot of it. And it was literally, going through one doctor after another. And I was like, this sucks. I was like, you don't have the answers either.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I must have been a horrible patient. I mean, I did what they asked, but yeah, it was just kind of like always trying to, put in a box. And I was just
Mhm.
like, I'm large. It better be a big box, number one. And number
Right.
two is I don't like boxes.
Right.
And
Right.
so it was probably 19. And so I did the sports card thing for years. I would go and I had to have my mom sign the contract for the sports card show. So they would actually give me a table. And I was like, Ma, you need to sign this. And she's like, what is it? I was like, they won't rent me a table to do my display because I'm only 16. I just gotten my license.
Nice.
And so she had to sign for it. And so she would do that. And so for a couple of years, I did shows like pretty much every other weekend. And that's how I made my money. And then I did the sports card stuff during the week. And then I went to work. The big God break in my life, the kind of my life miracle was, I was right about 18 years old. I was working at a video store. And there was this really nice lady who would work on Sundays for me so I could go to church on my Sunday mornings. And she finally says to me when I come in one day, she goes, do you ever think about being in software sales? And I was like, I don't know anything about computers,
Right.
anything. She goes, my company's hiring. I think you should come in for an interview. I go, okay. And I was like, I made $5.25 an hour
Yeah.
at the video store. My net take home weekly was $168.
Yikes.
That was my $168 a week. And
Ouch.
so she's like, yeah. So she's like, I think you should come in and interview. And I was like, okay. And so I had just gone in and interviewed at the Walmart distribution center and didn't get the job. Walmart sent me a Dear John letter, and I remember tearing it up. And then I was like, wait a second, I need that letter. And so I taped it all back together, and we've moved like 15 times since then. I have it in a box somewhere. I'm going to find it. I'm going to put it on my wall. But Walmart gave me a Dear John letter and wouldn't hire me. And so I went and I interviewed for this job, and they were like, no, too young, and I was 18 years old. They were like, no, just too young. They didn't say that, but everything they were saying, experience, blah, blah. And so I just took, so I was kind of defeated then. And then I went back to Walmart, re-interviewed again, got the job. I lasted 2 weeks. I was on the line that those trucks that they fill, it's 120 degrees in the summertime. It beyond sucks in those trucks.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm not doing this. And I finally made up in my mind, and I was like, this just is not where I'm supposed to be. And I got home and I had a message from her saying, hey, we're launching a new division. We want you to come in and interview for it. I went in, I interviewed for it. He goes, listen, don't expect that you're going to get an offer today. It just is what it is. I found out later that they completely lowballed me, but I took the job because they were going to pay me 18 grand my first year.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to make that much money. That's almost double what I'm making at the video store. So I took the job. 6 months later, I was the best person in that department. And then I got promoted to a sales job. I off the cuff mentioned to the director of sales, I said, you would think with a big move like this that I'm getting some sort of a raise. He goes, oh yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I was like, okay. He sees me the next in the morning. He goes, yeah, I saw you making 18.5. He goes, we're going to bump you up to 25. I was like, I accept. That sounds good. And then I was number one in sales 7 out of 12 months. And I was competing. I made 6 figures the year I turned 20. And
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite impressive.
Yeah. I was an animal. I worked every single day I was the first one in. I was the last one out. I worked on Saturdays. I prepped my work week every single week. So when I came in on Monday, I was banging phone calls, and then had 2 really good years and made a good amount of money, and still lived in a lifestyle where I was renting a room for my friend for $250. I was the hacker, not the hacky. Okay. Or the hacky, not the hacker, and rented a room for $250 and nice. With my buddies. And the rest is then history. And then I got out of that, had made enough money to then say, I'm going to put my money somewhere. It needs to be making me money. And then I got in the stock market like Mike, Mike from One Rental at a Time, got in the stock market, got my ass handed to me.
And what approximately when .com bubble burst time?
.com bubble. Yeah. Yeah. I invested in the company that had the first cash pad, like the swiper right next to it.
Okay.
So I'm thinking
smart. This is going to be big. Everyone's going to need them.
I'm like, I found this company. I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
And so then this company came out, ECNC. They came out. They were like, we just landed a massive contract. I bought their stock at like $15. It spiked to like 19 or 20. And I was like, this is awesome. I was like, I think I'm going to sell now. And the guy goes, dude, they haven't even started rolling it out yet. Now is not the time to sell. I was like, I think it is. And he goes, no, it's not. I'm like, all right. And so I was 19 or 20, I was 20 years old, and I was like, okay, I won't sell. So I didn't sell. And then 3 days later, it was posted that they actually hadn't gotten the contract, and the stock went.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. 19 or 20 down to like 12. And then they timed out. They put it on pause. They put the stock on pause to further investigate this fraudulent activity. Oh, no. Then the thing goes on 6-week hold. After 6-week hold, no kidding. After 6-week hold, the stock reopens at 91 cents.
Oh, yikes. Yeah. So everybody with any money can get the flip out.
Yeah. I got crushed. Crushed.
Yikes. I hope it wasn't too much money in there, but
I don't know. It was like 20. It was 20 grand. It was a lot of money to me then.
That still sucks because you took 20 grand and you turned it into probably like 1.
Yeah, it was less, but yes. Yeah. I mean, because I had to pay commission to sell it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Wonderful. Yep, just what you want to hear. That's how you get treated right there. All right, so Matt, as a millionaire Lamborghini pursuing landlord who owns 117 rental units, soon to be over 120, what I want to ask you, the high school dropout, the former Walmart employee after they rejected you and said, "Nah, you ain't good enough." I want to know what you think about today's generation of softies that they just complain. They don't want to work hard. I want you to compare and contrast their mindset versus your mindset. And is there any hope for young millennials and Generation Z?
Average is the new exceptionalism.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's always a participation trophy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. It's really criminal. It's really criminal. We are hard on our kids. My job isn't to be my kid's best friend. My job is to be their dad. And so I'm hard on my kids, but they will be productive parts of society. They will find what they love and they will be good at it because they love it, but also because they're going to be pushed. And I think that I see it often. And, you know, we went through 3 property managers in the last 7 months. And this is a really good paying job.
Yeah.
This is a really good paying job. And it only requires showing up, being respectful to tenants. And I kind of organize the week. Like, this is what we're going to be on this week. And then obviously if there's an emergency, we pull you off and you go handle the emergency. And it was shocking to me, you know, people saying, yeah, I just don't really love it. Oh, okay. So what are you going to go do? I'm going to go wait tables. My bad. And hey, it's not that waiters or waitresses are bad. It's just, there's a career peak there for that. And for mine, it is, I want you to be a PM. Then I want you to be managing groups of people. And then I want you in an office. Like, that's how our company is going to grow. I think so often, it's really, people are more than willing to take what they can get right now and make no investment in their future whatsoever. Their finances are like that. Their life is like that. Their skills are like that. And I think that so many people have been sold the bill of goods that college is the only way.
Yeah.
My best workers didn't go to college. They're just grinders. And it's not to say that if you didn't go to college, you're not a grinder. That's not the point. The point is that often I find the people that want to make it are really going to have to be exceptional because they don't have the general requirement of a college education. Right.
Okay. So a couple questions that I want to dig in on. Yes, I am sickened when I see extremely popular videos on Instagram Reels or TikTok of someone having a fake conversation with their boss. And the boss is like, "Hey, I need you to do some extra work." And then the employee is like, "Is that in my job description?" "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." It's like, okay, well, fair enough. You don't want to get saddled with extra work you're not getting paid for. I can understand that. Anybody can understand that. But let's talk about how you set yourself above and beyond everybody else you work with for promotions, for bonuses, for opportunities to network. Like, if you aren't willing to do work you're not being paid for, you're never going to get paid what you actually think you're worth. Like, at some point you have to put in that extra work. So I hate that sentiment. But I want to ask you a question on these folks who you're trying to hire as property managers. What do you think it is that would make them say to themselves, "I don't want the money. In fact, I'd rather go wait tables. I don't want to do this"? Because I think it's maybe they have a difficulty interacting with tenants, giving bad news. It's never fun to be like, "You didn't pay. Where's your money?"
So that's me still. I still do that.
Okay.
So I made it real easy on them. It was show up, do the work. When something breaks, take care of it. But when you're there, just be respectful that it's the tenant space. I think that largely it was no one wanted to be available with a phone call ringing. And I would literally show them the analytics and I would say, "Hey, just so you know, last year after 7 p.m., we got 3 phone calls, 3. So we have our business pretty dialed in if we only got those 3, right? And I have 117 units. So one of it was, the person couldn't manage people at all. And so he's like, every single time on any of these projects, he's like, they're going along great. And then like 4 weeks before we're supposed to finish, I'm like behind on 15 things. And I was like, right, because you're a horrible resource manager. You keep on calling people off the job, and then you think you're going well. And then 4 weeks before, you just said it. You completely mismanaged the resources that I allowed you to have. And they ended up going and getting jobs other places for people that actually could utilize them.
Right.
And it was just a lot of things like that. It was poor employee management. It was a lack of real planning. And that was even walking through the property with them once a week and saying, okay, this is what the list is for the next week. And if something's taking longer, you know that on Tuesday, you don't tell me on Friday. And it was like a lot of times the mistakes that were made would cause a Saturday to have to be worked. And I was like, well, you own the responsibility of getting the project done. I keep on giving you what's needed, and I'm walking around with you on a weekly basis, and I'm doing that, but I can't be here every single day during the week, because if I have to be here every day during the week, then I don't need you.
Right, exactly.
You have to make my job easier. And I think the other piece to it too is, I actually, I was that guy in the company that would always go to my boss and say, is there something more that I can do that can assist? Because I recognized very early on that no boss is going to go, so he's never done it before. He has no idea what he's doing. He never took a shot at it, but I'm going to promote you because I'm going to gamble my job and my reputation on you being good at something I've never seen you do before. That is a horrible idea. So for those of you who don't know, I have a day job. I work 50 hours a week as an executive vice president of a global sales organization. I hire people. And guess what? I don't hire a lot of people because the interview process for me is mind numbing, and the answers that I hear so often, you will not make it. You will be in that bottom 20% of most companies that you work for. And the funny thing is I've watched these people's LinkedIn profiles as they've interviewed and as they've gone other places. None of them have done anything. None of them have done anything of consequence. Nope. Some of them have caught the right star on the ride up. Some of them have caught that. And then they bounced around 5 other companies in 3 years because they didn't find the next right star.
I've had sort of a similar experience. In law enforcement, there's regular law enforcement, and then there's like specialty positions like bomb squad, like K9 handlers, detectives, the SWAT team. And these are all almost always very highly sought after positions. There's a certain amount of prestige that comes with being a detective, getting to work on more high profile cases, being on the SWAT team, being able to take down more dangerous and prolific criminals and things like that. And it's always extremely interesting to me when a position comes open. There's an entire interview process, and you're competing against all of these other officers that want this exact same position. And you'll get someone who claims to be highly motivated, who claims to be interested in. And one of the very first standard boilerplate questions that we ask everybody for pretty much any position is, okay, why do you want this position? And they don't really have a good answer. Okay, what have you done to prepare yourself for this position? And they don't have any answer. And it's like, why would you be better than another candidate for this position? And they don't have any answer. And you're just sitting there scratching your head like, how could you come so unprepared? And then from there, they go back and you say, all right, well, look, here's your, and we have to give like a post-interview feedback. It usually comes a little bit later. But, it's the government. We have to be fair and balanced. And so you got to give your post-interview feedback. And, you'll explain to them, maybe in the future, if you're interested, it would be smart to put into cross-train, to come job shadow, essentially is what it is. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'll definitely try out again for the SWAT team. I swear I'll get my sit-ups and my push-ups where they're supposed to be. We never hear from these people again. Ever. And it's so frustrating to see. It's like, where is the motivation to get, did you really just think it was going to be handed to you? And they do. They think because they showed up, they should get the participation trophy.
Yeah. Eventually you get too big for the seat that you're in and you think that equals promotion. And it just doesn't. I mean, you got to earn your spot. And that's one of the things that as an uneducated, not unintelligent, but as an uneducated person, sales was a level playing field. I just had to out execute and out grind the guy next to me and my competitor or even my colleague. And so in every sales organization I was ever in, I was the best. And and it wasn't immediately I was the best. It was, I asked a million questions in the first 6 months I was in any job. People were like, okay, you have a question on that? Yeah, I do. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Got a whole list of questions. I was the idiot staying after in the training sessions. And that was showing every trainer and every director of every trainer, this guy sticks around in every single training class. Any shot that we're going to give anybody, we're going to give. I was the youngest product. I was in charge of a product for all of North America for a software company at 26 years old. That was, I was literally said, we want to hire you for this job. And I said, okay, why? I interviewed them. Okay, why?
Like, turn the tables on them.
Yeah, they're like, for 5 years, you've broken every record that we have here as an organization. We're multinational, and we know because you sold some of our product. Because I would go introduce myself to other product managers and say, talk to me about your product and why people need it. And if they had a good story, I would start pitching their product to our customers. And that's how I ended up getting some momentum. And so I think people don't ask nearly enough questions, but at the end of the day, yeah, when you're taking your nap, I'm out grinding you. It's just the way that it goes. And so it's that, I think it's Calvin Coolidge that said, persistence alone is omnipotent. And
yes,
you just push and you grind, and no is not an answer. And the other thing too is, you know, people that are sometimes bad at something, it's because they've continued to get the answer that they wanted, but they're not listening to the feedback that they're getting. And so you're doing the same stuff. Your result's never going to change. It just isn't. You know, the next time your result changes is when the entire SWAT team goes in on a lottery ticket. They all win 10 million bucks a piece. Then they have to hire an entire SWAT team. That's the next time you're getting a spot on that team.
Right? That's going to be a bad day too.
Yeah, that's exactly. Crisis of confidence, right? Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, for sure.
I really enjoy, and I know you like sports analogies. I know we've talked about Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. I'm also a real big fan of Kobe. And I remember that I've listened to him speak about how, you know, he would get up at 6 a.m. and work out until 9. Then he'd take a nap or something, he'd ice, and he'd get up and go back at like noon until, 2, and then he'd rest again. And then when the actual team practice happened at 3:30 or something, he'd already played 6 more hours than everybody else when they were showing up for practice. And he says, as you do that every day, every week, every month for years, eventually you get so much further ahead than everybody else. Yes. They will never catch up to you. It's impossible. Ever. So how does that apply in your life? With real estate investing, I hate when you say I'm uneducated, because I understand you're saying it sort of as a joke, sarcasm. And I hate the term educated when it references college, because I think it's stupid. You're an extremely educated person. You are just alternatively educated. You're not traditionally educated. I hate the idea of college, but I absolutely think education is paramount. So I want to know where you think in terms of that Kobe mindset of outworking everybody so that they can never catch up to you, and how that applies to, well, you're uneducated. You didn't work very hard.
Yeah. I mean, when you're uneducated, you have to work that much harder. I mean, I literally went and Oracle is one of the biggest software companies in the world.
Oh, actually, I arrested a guy for having his illegal weed farm, and he was some high up guy at Oracle.
See, there you go.
There you go. Fun fact. Little dirty side business on the side. He was growing millions of dollars worth of weed in his garage.
Yeah. So, but he could have millions of dollars worth of weed in his garage because he had that job. And so they have jobs that are called beach house jobs. And so those beach house jobs, they literally say, hey, this is a beach house job. That's what their recruiter says. And you're like, and I wasn't familiar with the term. I said, I need to understand what that means. He goes, within 3 years, if you're good at this, just good, you're going to have a beach house. I was like, really? Okay, I like the sound of that. Yeah. And I said, how many people are interviewing for this position? He said 1,000. I said 1,000. He goes, we have a huge team of recruiters on there. Long story short, it took 6 months, 7 interviews. I got the job.
Attaboy.
And then I turned him down. Because he goes,
you ain't good enough for me.
He goes, you're what? I said, you guys aren't willing to be flexible at all on your pay. You just told me that I was 1 out of 1,000 that won this job, and you don't want to pay me more than what you thought you should pay. Yeah. We're off to a bad start. Yeah. And so he's like, oh, it'd be a bunch of exceptions. I was like, so you're telling me that in order for me to take this job and get the money that I asked for, you have to do a bunch of paperwork and get those exceptions? He's like, yeah, exactly. I said, if you want me, you're going to have to sign all those paperwork and you're going to have to get all those exceptions, because I'm not coming for that. He's like, okay. So he started the process and got back to me, and he goes, He goes, it's like a month's worth of paperwork. They need to fill this job immediately. He's like, yes or no? I said, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I said, we'll talk again. I'm sure someday when that guy washes out before me. But I think the Kobe thing is exactly right. It is the 10,000 hours of preparation that meets the moment of opportunity.
Right.
It's the Michael Jordan. Listen, Jordan was gifted. Yes. But what you do with your gift and what you do with your God-given gift, talent, and ability, and how you hone that skill and how you maximize your opportunities, that's what makes good players great. There's plenty of guys that came out into the NBA through the draft and everyone's like, he's the guy. He also went number 3. He's the guy. And what happens? Flame out. And why? It's because they think the event was getting there and signing the fatty deal, when it means no. Now you double down. Now you show them why they drafted you number 3, and you make the number 1 and number 2 guys look like idiots because you were drafted number 3. I mean, I'm about as undrafted a free agent as you can possibly get as a 9th grade dropout. And that's just the way it goes. And that's fine. But for me, I look at every part of my business because I'm a self-managing landlord. For the first 5 or 6 projects, I did all the work myself, and I never had any experience being a carpenter. I had to buy tools. I had to watch videos. I had to figure stuff out. Videos weren't even really a thing in my first 5 years. I had to literally hire people and say, I'll work with you. Just show me what you need me to do so I could understand the job. And I said, no, I'll work for free. I was like, I'm the best deal you're going to get. But it was closed down the amount of time that they had to spend on the job. So I agree with the Kobe sentiment 100%, which is you got to be out hustling. You got to be out grinding. You got to be doing more work than the next guy. And if you do that over a period of time, like I look at people, I have a friend of mine, sort of a friend, 19 years ago, 20 years ago, he bought a unit and I bought a unit. It's now a little over 20 years later. He has 2 units and I have 117.
Yeah. Who worked harder, who sacrificed more.
Who worked harder, who sacrificed more, who grinded, who had some nights where they didn't get any sleep, who put off getting married. I put off getting married for it, because I was like, people are like, oh no, you need to date. No, I don't. No, it's expensive. It's time consuming.
Yeah.
Nah. And so I literally took 3 or 4 years where it was all about the hustle and grind. And so I think that people often aren't, the juice isn't worth the squeeze for them. They're not willing to do the work to get that moment of opportunity. And again, that woman, she saw in me something even in the video store where it was like, she saw that I never missed a shift. She saw that I was always early. I'd always stay late. I took pride in the thing that I was doing and made sure it was done well. And she knew that I wasn't going to make her look like an idiot if I started working for that company. And I started in that company in a telemarketing position.
Glamorous.
That's which is awesome. It's like, here's your sheet, dial 200 times today and sound smiley.
Yeah. I can't imagine. That's one that I have avoided. Never did a call center or anything like that. I did work at McDonald's. I did work at Walmart. I drove semi trucks because in North Dakota, believe it or not, you do not have to have a commercial driver's license to drive if you were driving from the farm and to the beet factory and back. There's exemptions for these agricultural states. 18 years old, I'm out there learning to drive a friggin' 18-wheeler so I could take the sugar beets or the soybeans to the factory and back.
So you're the guy that got the Walmart job instead of me.
Yeah, that was me. Okay, so through an unprecedented and unparalleled level of hard work, determination, perseverance, you managed to go from high school dropout to very high up in a software organization, selling software, managing other people, having a great job with a pretty good income. And at some point you get those first 2 units. So how did you get into real estate? How did you get the first 10? What was your journey? When did you buy the first one? And how long did it take to get to your first 10?
So I was, as I said before, I was the roommate, not the owner, my first one. I was 18 years old. In that one, 18, 19. And then I started making some money and then I started saving some money, being my buddy's roommate. And then I said, okay, I'm going to buy my own place. And so I was like, yep, going to buy my own place. And so I'd saved up enough money and I was like, I can't afford the place I want. This sucks. And I was like, and I'm not going to wait another year. So I found a roommate and I became the hacker and he became the hacky.
Hmm.
And so I bought this place. We moved in. HOA and condo. Here's why I don't do them anymore is I bought it. I loved it. Beautiful, beautiful area just outside of Boston.
Hmm.
Bunch of athletes lived there. It was a really cool, kind of fun place to
Nice.
be. Yeah, it was fun. Buy the place, get in there for 2 years. Appreciation. The appreciation, Mike, was crazy. It was
Hmm.
like, I think I paid like low threes, and I think it was worth, high threes when I went to go sell it. And 5 days after I listed it, we got a judgment against the building, or a voted on judgment against the building to reskin the entire building. And it was $5 million. And my portion was 70,000.
Oh yeah. I've heard you tell this story before, but
So it was horrible. Yep. So I was like, okay, well, I'm still selling it. And so the difference is when we sold, instead of walking away with a check for like 60, 70 grand, I
Yeah.
walked away with one for like 10.
Ouch.
But it taught me the lesson of no condos and no HOAs,
Right.
because you never know. And so that was the first one, but I sold that. And then I bought my very first single family home, and I was like renting out to roommates. But then I was like, this thing doesn't really cash flow. I was like, this isn't going to cash flow. I'm always going to have roommates. Don't love that. I like my own space,
Mhm.
and more than my own space. And so I bought a triplex. Then I bought another triplex, and then I bought a small, like a cottage on a lake.
Mhm.
And so those were kind of like the first few, and then the Great Recession hit.
Okay.
And I always tell the story. In August, I had 8 people paying rent. In September, I had 3 people paying rent, and in October, I had 1 person paying rent.
Yikes. But you still had all those properties. And
Still
real
had all
quick,
those
were
properties.
were they
Yeah.
all on fixed rate 30-year mortgages, or were you caught up in
Yes.
any of these adjustable rates? Okay, so
No.
you avoided adjustable rate
Avoided.
mortgages. You were
Yep.
smart enough. Okay.
Yep. Avoided them. Well, I looked at it too, and I was just like, I kind of want that program. My mortgage broker's like, yeah, I might be able to get you in that program, but it's going to shift some things. And so I kind of looked at it, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess it seems like a little bit risky. I still might want to do them, but he's like, yeah, maybe. And so we just kind of talked back and forth. He's like, listen, you've got the money, put it to work.
Mhm.
He's like, you might as well put it to work. And so I bought those properties, and within 2 or 3 years of owning them, they were worth 25%, 75%. They were 25% discounted off of what I paid for them.
Mhm.
So, and renters weren't paying. We literally got to the point where I was working a 6-figure job just to pay the bills,
Mhm.
because I just save up money to evict people. That's
Right.
the point that we got to. So that was so we took a little bit of a break in kind of 07 and 08, kind of right the ship. We didn't have any late payments. And then we started buying again kind of in 09. But the only way I could get a deal done was because Fannie and Freddie had passed their rule, which was 10 down to 4.
Right. Right.
So I couldn't get a deal anymore. So it was 10 down to 4. So we got into, basically, we started doing owner occ. And so I met my wife, and I said, I had bought something that was a single family home that I was like, hey, we're going to move into this, and this is going to be the plan, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, sounds good. And then when the economy and everything kind of blew out, and everything was really, really hard. I went through the worst financial time I had, and I was just getting married, and we had to pay for our own wedding and the whole 9 yards and engagement ring. It was a nightmare. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first 10 took from like 01 to probably 2012, I think.
Okay.
2012, 2013 to get the first 10 buildings.
Wow.
And now we have like 39.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So it just rolls, gets better.
So you bought the condo, you decide to move out of the condo, you move into a single family home, it's not cash flowing.
No.
So then you go into a triplex. Did you sell the single family home?
Single family I kept,
Okay.
because I could, based on the rate that I got, and the fact that I had a HELOC against it, I couldn't sell it with everything with all the debt that I had on it. I would have had to write a check. The good news was I could rent it out for about what I was paying for it.
Okay. So it was at least break even. It wasn't
It was,
killing you. But
Yep.
okay. So then was it when you bought the triplex that you finally made the conscious decision of, I'm gonna be a landlord? Or at that point were you still just I'm just kind of I'll deal with it because this is easier to live with tenants paying me?
So I was kind of in the position where at that point I was like, you know what? I need a place to put my money. I don't trust it in the stock market.
Mhm.
I want to put this in a place where I believe it's going to grow, where it is. I felt like the stock market was a game.
Mhm.
I felt like it was a game. I felt like it was a game that I couldn't win. And so I was just like, this is not a game that I can win. And so I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I had grown up being all around real estate, wanted to make my own path. I was like, I made my own path. I've started to make some money, but I know real estate a little bit. Let's explore it a little bit more. And so I was doing the math on my very first deal. I was like, you know what? This isn't bad. Like I put $80,000 into it, or 80 or 85,000 bucks into that first triplex. And I want to say my income was, about $650 a month after expenses.
Mhm.
So I was like, hey, at the end of the day, this thing makes about 8%, 8.5%, not too bad. And so I was like, yeah, so then let's do this. And so I bought that one and that one worked. And then like 6 months later, I still had money left. I bought another one and that one worked, until it didn't, until the Great Recession hit. And I bought in areas that were transitioning from kind of D to C and then C to B.
Mhm.
But that was such a massive transaction. It didn't hold. And so everything went back to D.
Mhm.
And so it was bad neighborhoods and crime. And we saw there were blue lights there on the reg.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
All
so
the
it's just
time.
like, yeah, this is not going to work. And so it was the kind of tenant that we could get went way down. I mean, it was bad all over. And so we basically just started filling the place with people that were good enough, and that made for a high engagement management level.
I bet it did. I bet you spent a lot of
Yeah.
time over there knocking on the door. It's the first of the month. How
Yes,
you
it
doing?
is. Yeah. Hi, how's it going? Still haven't gotten your check yet.
Right.
Because there was
Right.
no online paying anything then.
Yeah.
That was in the early 2000s. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, online paying was not a thing.
Yep. Zelle wasn't around. Venmo wasn't around. PayPal had been around for a couple of years. You weren't paying
Yeah.
rent on it.
No, that was only what you bought with goods on eBay, right? So
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 2001 to 2012, through the Great Recession, you build up to those first 10 buildings. But then from 2012 to 2022, we've 10x'd that.
Yeah.
And you've gone to 117. What was that journey like? What was the progression? How did you grow so quickly? Most people would look at that and say exponential growth.
Yeah. So the model then became, because Fannie and Freddie had made the new rule, which was no more than 4 houses that we'll do for you. And I was like, okay. So they wouldn't have anything more than 4 deals on the Fannie Freddie balance sheet. So I had to go to banks and I would say, it's going to be an owner occ. I'm going to live there. And would they basically consider doing the loan? It was really hard to find that next bank. It was really hard. But I called a bunch of banks and I just said, this is what I'm planning on doing. And so I moved into that one, fixed it up, refied out, got a little bit of money back in my pocket, usually enough of what I'd put into it. I could pull a lot out of it to then buy the next place. And so it was like cash out refi constantly, but we moved 9 times in 13 years. 9 times in 13 years. So that was the commitment I had to being successful.
Yeah. No
And
kidding.
then, so not until like 2013, 2014, did I start buying deals that I didn't have to move into to get.
Sure.
So that was, 14 years after the journey started, I'm finally able to not have to move into it. But I house hacked until I was 40.
Wow.
So we had a duplex, the other side rented out. We lived on one side, but then we're like, hey, we're going to have it's baby time now. And I was like, we can't do that to the neighbors.
Yes. So, I mean, really what I'm just hearing is thematically through our conversation over and over and over again is it's about sacrifice, determination, perseverance, and grit. I house hacked until I was 40. Why do you at 22, 25, 30, 33, 35 think you deserve a 5-bedroom, 2-bed house? Why? I mean, if you're going to do that and agree to working until you're 65, at a company that you don't like, that would fire you in a second because they don't care anything about you at all beyond the amount of money you can make them. If you're going to sign yourself up for that, then all right, that's your choice, but if you're going to then turn around and complain that the system is broken, that capitalism isn't fair, that it's stacked against you, that the little guy can't get ahead, why aren't you willing to sacrifice and do what Matt's done, which is house hack till he was 40? I mean, I'm sure your wife over the years said, oh, man, don't you think we have enough units yet? Can we buy ourselves a house? I mean, I'm sure you had those conversations, right?
She was, yeah. I mean, she was great about it because I said, like, okay, like it's a progression of things. And I was like, I know that you eventually want to be home with the kids. So we're going to be a one income family.
Right.
So we need as much income going into that decision as we possibly can get. And she was great. She was super patient. And the funny thing is I'm so cheap that the first single family house I bought was a gut job. So I bought this single family. And so it was funny. She was like timing me. She's like, you said by the time the baby comes, and I didn't find the house until she was 6 months pregnant.
Oh.
So I had 90 days to do this house, but it was the perfect house. It was like, it was on a river and had black mold. And if anybody ever wants to look at it, it's 2 Whittier Falls Way in Dover, New Hampshire. I bought that house, I gutted it, and I made it an absolute showpiece. And I said, my wife had so much faith and trust in me. Her mom, my mother-in-law, actually said to her, she goes, like, do you trust him to make that decision? She goes, oh, look what he's built. Like, yeah. Look what he's like. Yeah, I do. I'm fine. She never even been inside the house until I finished it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we just did the house up. We made it absolutely crazy, sick, awesome. Mm-hmm. And then we had the opportunity where it was like, it was our home. We really loved it. But we had the opportunity where, thank you, government, for anything over 2 years, if you've lived here as your primary residence, you get $250,000 that doesn't get taxed, and $500 if you're married. Mm-hmm. So I bought that for $227. I put about 150 or so into it. So I was into about for $375, and we sold for $605 2 years later.
Wow.
And I took all of that money out, and I used only half of that as the down payment for the new house that I moved into. Okay. But then I took that other capital and I deployed it, and I actually bought 2 more rental properties with it. Mm-hmm. So I turned my single family house into 2 more rentals and my primary. And now we're in a primary that I don't know that we're going to leave anytime soon. We'll see.
Yeah. Once you start raising the kids and they get, especially once they go to school, just things get a little bit trickier,
It will get a little bit more challenging.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation. I think that it's extremely important for people to hear stories like this, because, a lot of the time people want to make the easy excuse, which is, you were born with unfair advantages I don't have. You went to a better school. You had a better paying job. You had connections. You had a silver spoon. You other than, and again, as we started the video, this is America. This is the 4th of July. It's American Independence Day. America truly, in my opinion, is an exceptional country.
Absolutely.
And so I believe if I was born in the USA, I already won the lottery. That's the only advantage that I really needed to get to where I'm at right now. But other than that, you can take away all of those other privileges that many people have. And if you're willing to sacrifice and work and have grit, perseverance, determination like Matt, you can become financially free, become a very successful real estate investor, get a software sales job when you have no idea about software. You work at a video store at the age of 18. Matt, why don't you give us your final thoughts on I guess, America and the opportunity that we have here?
Love my country. Love it more than almost anything other than my family. We have an amazing country. We have amazing people like you that keep us safe. When I get pulled over, I deserved it. So at the end of the day, I love it. I love our country. I think that the system is not perfect, but it's far better than anywhere else. And there's a reason why people aren't running across our border into Canada and Mexico. That's all I can say about that, is that I love our country. I think that we are absolutely exceptional. We do a lot with students that are coming over. And I can tell you, after they're here for 12 months, they rarely want to go home. They're just like, I love everything about America. And they recognize that it's not perfect, but I think very often people don't look at it as the outsider's view. If you want to get that next job, if you want to get that next step in your career, it takes so little in our current society to be exceptional. Don't be embarrassed by it. Embrace it, work hard, and you'll likely end up further ahead in the race than anybody else. And for anyone that's telling you it's not a race, it is. It just is. That's the truth. You're not racing against everybody else, but you are racing against yourself. Get something. Everyone wants to provide for their family. And I think that you have to put in the time, the work, the effort, the energy to do it, to get there.
I agree 100% and couldn't say it better myself. Matt, where can people find you?
Lumberjack Landlord on Instagram and YouTube, and my 3-hour live stream every Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We just keep on going until we get all the questions.
I highly suggest you follow him. He's a great dude and he has a lot of good stuff. So guys, until next time, I'll catch you later.